Yo, podcast family, listen, thank you for tuning into the Albert Tate podcast. I'm so excited. This week, the season is all about moments that shaped you. This week, we talk about sex, and we talk about how sex shapes us. I remember being introduced to sex when I was a child by way of pornography, and how that then impacted how I saw sex. It tainted the healthy, beautiful vision that God created it to be and turned it into something else. My special guest today knows all about having sex. Well, not about having sex. I said that wrong. Anyway, whatever. He's, I don't know how to explain him. His name is Craig Gross. He's the founder and creator of XXXchurch.com, and he's done a lot of work with men and women and couples who struggle with pornography, trying to cast a vision for a healthy sexuality and what a healthy sex life looks like. So listen, if you're single, if you're married, we are talking about sex today and all the wrong ways this can be done and all the right ways that God has painted it to be. Moments that shaped us. Craig Gross. I'm already thinking I'm in trouble already. So we might have to hurry up and listen to this episode before we have to pull it down. Craig Gross, ladies and gentlemen, watch this.
Stadia has had the honor of helping hundreds of great leaders start new churches. We have a passionate desire to make sure that every child on the planet can experience the overwhelming love of Jesus Christ through the local church. This vision compels us to ask one very important question. Who's next? Who are the leaders that God is raising up to plant new churches? Who are the leaders that will answer the call to say, I'll follow, I'll raise up this generation, the next generation to know Jesus Christ and to change the world forever? Are you ready to start your church planting journey? Perhaps you know someone who is. Stadia is ready to help, and we'll be with you every step of the way, because we won't stop until every child has a church.
Yo, we got Craig Gross in the building. Craig, my man.
What's happening?
Dude, so good to have you here.
Fun.
We're going to have a fun conversation about sex and a little bit of everything else, right?
I was telling you before, my mom loves this church. I almost brought her, but then I was like, no, we're talking about sex on this podcast. Mom, you can't sit in on this.
It'd be a little awkward for Mom, but Mom, I love you too, girl. It is awesome.
Back in church.
So I kind of want to do a little, I remember being a young kid in youth group. I wasn't that young, but I remember when XXX Church, I was in Mississippi.
Okay.
I just started hearing about XXX Church, and man, I was sitting all the youth group kids there to set up accountability stuff and all that. How did you get into XXX Church? Tell me how this concept came about, how y'all came up with this idea.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing is, so I ran youth conferences. I was a youth pastor up in Fullerton at Eastside Christian Church. Thought that's what I'd do the rest of my life. From there, started a speaking ministry and then started putting on our own youth conferences. So there's a guy, Mike Foster, that was in a Pulse Praise band. He was like our worship go-to band. So we were doing conferences all over the country. We were doing week-long conferences for kids in Palm Springs. So one day we're all sitting at P.F. Chang's, just in Orange County, me and Mike sitting there. And we had, at this recent event, we wrote this talk about porn. So Mike's there, he's doing worship, and it was at that day and age where like AOL had just kind of come out. You had those 5 hours of free internet.
Oh, yeah.
And so I wrote this talk that it was more of this kind of drama, skit, comedy thing that we were doing, but it was like what every kid was going through. They got the trial, they signed up for the free thing, they forgot to cancel the credit card. Now their mom's seeing their charge on the credit card. So when we did that, like at camps, people were like, oh my goodness, how did they know? Like, because that situation happened to every kid back in that day.
Wow.
And so Mike and I, as we were talking, it was just like, we were actually about to head out for 20-something youth conferences with a company out of Joplin, Missouri that summer, just me and my friend Jake. And as we're sitting there, we're like, okay, the youth pastor idea, we're like, well, we got asked to do this porn talk 20-something times in front of like 25,000 kids. And that's when we just said, hey, we should make a website. At the time, it was like this was early 2001. What do we know about websites? And so as Mike and I were sitting there talking, it was just this idea of, well, dude, I don't know. We'll get to that later. Let's just make a t-shirt. And at the end of my talk, I'll wear the t-shirt and we'll just direct people to the website and it'll say coming soon. So the joke was like, we're youth pastors. We know how to make t-shirts. But we'll see. So that summer, as we hit the road, and it was weird that we got asked to do that. So what we kind of found was there was an opportunity that people wanted to hear about this conversation nobody was having. It wasn't in the main church, it was with the youth.
Yeah.
But then from there, we just thought, man, there's an opportunity to create a safe place online that could get people help. So I went from focusing on Christian kids all summer long to listening to Howard Stern, and he was talking about a porn show, and a porn show that was going to happen in January. I knew nothing about that world. So that's when my mind started spinning of going, dude, we want to hit the audience, the Christian audience. That's easy. We can find that audience really easy. That's what we know really well. But what about this Howard Stern audience over here at a porn show? And could we create a site that would attract both, like the secular people, the Christian people? And we actually originally thought, do we need a different name that doesn't have church in it? And we just thought, no, let's keep this name, but let's go try and reach these people and try and bring these people as well. Had no idea, obviously, the controversy, the fallout, the craziness that would ensue after launching this at a porn show. But the original idea was, hey, we're youth pastors, we want to help youth. And this was what youth were after at the time.
So you guys launched it at a porn show.
Yeah, so we called up. So, I called up. I remember, I called up the company that put this on. Howard Stern said he'd be there for 5 days interviewing all the porn stars. I've been to youth pastor conferences. I've been to, events like that. I've been to baseball card shows. But the thought of, what is a porn show? And at the time, it was the same week as the electronics show. I'd heard of that. And it was like, okay, it sounds like this, not free for all, because there's rules. It's in a convention center. It's not like just this sex fest, but it's porn stars are on display. Their products are on display. Well, I bet we would stand out if we showed up in that circle. And like, when you have a good idea, and then sometimes when you're like, okay, let's lay low.
Yeah.
Because if I let them know everything, like they ask very little questions, like what do you guys have? XXXchurch.com. That could be a number of things. And it said coming soon. So literally the scariest part of this whole thing wasn't even getting to the porn show. Getting to the porn show was easy. Putting the website live once we're standing in the porn show, because we felt like that now turns the switch to say, no, we're not really in favor of all this. We're actually here to help. So when the site went live and we're out there, but it didn't matter. Like, literally, the lady from the ABC News came and LA Times right away, and they're like, you guys are the most interesting booth here. We knew that because it's interesting, it's creative, but what we didn't know is it's also very easy to put on media compared to the sex toy booth next to us.
Yeah.
Or the porn star.
It's a story that you can tell.
Yeah, you can tell the story
with evening news.
With showing the images that are going to get viewers, but like pastors at a porn show. Yeah. But we had no idea how press works, what that would look like. Like I said, this was an afterthought, conversation. Hey, we should do this. And didn't think for the next 17 years, this is where I'd spend day in and day out of my time. At the time it was, this is fun, let's launch a website.
So who comes up, how did y'all come up with the name XXX Church? Is that y'all on the napkin? And what were the names that didn't make it? You know what I mean? Some of these, I don't want to give out the websites now, there's probably porn sites, but I remember we're like porn, like literally pornindustries.org, and we're like, that would be our secular version. But, we had all these slogans like that. Number one, like our first shirt actually said XXXchurch.com. Our first banner, it's still in my garage, said XXXchurch.com, the #1 Christian porn site. And we're like, what's number 2? There isn't. So we're number 1. And that's why I was like, hey, just do something no one else is doing. But I think we really, as we went back and forth with the idea of XXX Church, and to this day, I've done a number of other things in my mind. Whenever I have an idea, I have right now in my GoDaddy account 335 domain names, because I'm like, I remember when Mike and I were sitting there at P.F. Chang's, there was no mobile phones and I was like, I can't finish this meal quick enough. We got to get down to, back in the day, it was before GoDaddy, it was like Netstar Register, and see if this, because I hate talking about an idea that and you get in
and you're like, oh, somebody's already doing it.
Yeah,
I can be okay if the site's for sale.
Yeah.
But if somebody's already developed this, then we go home and you're like, that's why even, last night, it was something I was thinking of. I was like, wait, that site's available? And
did you buy a site last night?
Yeah, it was, my buddy's doing a real estate course, and I was like, dude, free real estate hacks. I was like, that can't be available. And it was just one of those things of I I hate talking about something where you're like, dude, just put it on this.com.
So you bought free real estate hacks last night?
Yeah, for my friend, because I was like, dude, or like we were doing a 5-day marriage challenge the other day. I was like, 5-day marriage. There's a lot of .coms that are hard to get now.
Right.
So when I found XXX Church and it was available for $9, you're like, all right. We didn't buy all the misspellings, which we should have, so now all those lead to porn sites. But
all the misspellings lead to porn sites?
That's how they do so well, because it's like 4X Church. If you type in too many X's, think about it, like all the mistakes you could make.
Yeah.
I mean,
especially when you're trying to type it really quick.
Yeah, and then
before
you're
the
like,
door opens.
Yeah. Or you know how many churches I go to, they're like, please welcome Craig from XXX.com, and you're like, guys, you've just promoted. So I think we just went with it. And
so take me back to the porn show. You guys are there. Like the obvious question, you probably answered this millions of times. How do you not create struggles for your own personal holiness in like, how do you not, like, you're walking around porn stuff all the time.
Yeah.
How do you not get the cooties? How do you not get, how does the sin not get on you? How does it, you know what I mean? How do you keep yourself?
Yeah, and I would say as we've been in it longer, it's easier. Yeah. The first time we're so overwhelmed, we're fearful, we're scared, not of like what we're gonna see, of just like, are we gonna get thrown out? Are they gonna like us? How's this gonna respond? Are we gonna say the right thing? You're balancing a very odd conversation because nobody's done this before you.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that though kept you away from, like, you're kind of more heightened and amped up. As we've stayed in it longer, obviously, like, one way is, I don't do this every week. I do personally now, I do the Chicago show and the Vegas show. And so doing a couple a year, every weekend I wouldn't want to be in that room.
Yeah.
There's also context. Like, I can go in a room and the emails and the phone conversations, what's sitting just in my inbox shines a kind of a flashlight on the reality of this. So you walk in a room, you're like, oh, it's not real. That porn star actually emailed us and talked about how she wants out and now she's signing autographs. She looks all this, but we could see the deadness in her eyes. You can see that these people here, the conflict, you see how the emails and the phone calls and the couples you've sat with that have brought this in that are devastated. So you have a different filter, a different lens.
Yeah.
And you're also going, okay, cool, so many people are praying, they're fasting, we're taking this seriously, where no one's just, oh, I'm off to the porn show today. Like, whether it's family, whether it's friends, it's accountability, other people are there. And I think you and I, like, if I read about something in the tabloids that happens with you, it's probably not gonna be it's probably gonna be behind closed doors where we all, mess up. Not where
ministry.
LA Times is following you around. It's pretty easy to be like, okay, like, yeah, we're good here.
Yeah.
And this is it's the one question I get, and I don't have this quick response, but the third year I was there, I went over the electronics show because I was like, I need a break. And so I don't go through the porn show. We stay at our booth. We don't go anywhere by ourselves. The women can, but for us, it's just like there's people around. You're wearing a t-shirt. It's probably the last place. And you're not caught off guard.
Yeah.
If we're at the supermarket and all of a sudden the swimsuit issue like shows up and you're like, oh, or you're at an airport and no one's around, you're like, oh, let me.
Yeah.
But you're here and you're like, okay, I'm going to expect this. But I'm at the electronics show because I'm like a geek and I'm like, I'm going to go look at phones. All the Playmates were there. And a part of me is like, how did they sneak over from the porn show? But the reality is Playmates aren't porn. It's like mainstream. So they're signing at some geek gadget booth and I found myself going, this is way more attractive. They actually have clothes on.
Yeah.
They're in bikinis. They're great looking. And they're signing around gadgets. And I found myself just stopped and sat there. And I was literally like, I got to get back to the porn show. Because like
I'm about to stumble. I got to get back to the porn show before I sin.
No, but it was one of those like when you're caught off guard and you're there by yourself and then you're going.
Makes sense.
And then there's also, I don't want to be too graphic, but there's something about beauty versus like the way porn's gotten over the last several years. Like a 20-foot display of just the woman's zoomed in private part, to me, like I'd rather see somebody in a swimsuit looking beautiful than like a zoomed in. It's gotten so gross and so over the top. And then one more thing, and this kind of puts it probably in better context. A buddy of mine said, he started working for us, said, hey, we used to do youth conferences together. And he's like, but I can never go to a porn show. That's fine, it's not requirement. Yeah. But I would say people that have struggled, if you saw the context of what happens in a porn show, this would actually help you.
It'll give perspective.
So anyways, he's like, I can't do it. But after a couple of years, he's like, okay, I want to see this. So he comes to the porn show, and we're sitting there, literally across from us is a girl signing autographs. And you see it, like that's kind of the deadness in their eyes. You see the fake, like, I love you. But you're like, so she looks over at us, and then she says to him, she comes over and starts talking. And my buddy Jake was with me that used to do this Craig and Jake speaking gig together. And then Ryan was a youth pastor. And she's like, Craig and Jake, Ryan? And he's like, what? She's like, you were my youth pastor.
No way.
So then we all were talking about a youth camp that Jake and I spoke at in Ryan's youth group, and now she's a porn star. So all of us can go, okay, we need to quit our jobs right now because like that, none of that worked.
Worst youth pastors ever.
Yeah, but we're like, but then Ryan literally, I remembered him walking out of the show, and he said to me, I don't know how you do this. And it was one of those like, you thought you couldn't do this for the simple reason of boobs and this in your face. The reason you can't do this, because this is way darker and deeper. Like this girl was in your youth ministry, and she's sitting here now signing videos where she's had sex on camera. Like there's something, like that hurts.
Wow.
And that's where it was like, yeah, this stuff. So I think our team and the people that come with us, they have a different lens. And it's wild, man. We took a porn star that just left the industry 5 years ago back to Vegas for the first time this year. And I'm always amazed, like why you would want to go back and how hard that's going to be. You know, I was talking to her husband on what that's like. She was a huge star, and now she's back. But I watched her, how she had an impact like we could never have because, but then I was like, Brittany, the fact that you're back here, like you could be so many other places, but it's always wild to me the people that are drawn into those rooms. And that's where I just go, man, when we're on the sideline critiquing, oh, I can't believe he did that or that. I'm telling you, like, I've seen God work in ways through people that, man, it's just, yeah, they've taken a leap of faith or we've done something. And you could be scared, but you could also go, man, I know there's an opportunity here and I know there's a way to do this. Man, it might not be right. We might have made mistakes here and there on, hey, we tried this approach, but we're trying. And I think that's the idea of, like, we're not scared.
So now that you're there and they know who you are, it's not like that first time. They know who you guys are. Are they still open to y'all being there? Are they excited about a partnership with you guys, or is it hostile? Is it is there tension?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, so I've been doing this since 2002. So you know, because you were saying when you first heard of us. So like 04, 05, 06, when there's this thing happened with obviously like Rob Bell, Craig Gershell, Bill Hybels. There's a series of influential pastors that open up their churches to us. So that led to so many other churches. But that also led to this debate from people like Focus on the Family that were like, oh, they're crazy. And I was like, look, I want to go where the doors are open.
Wait a minute. Focus on the Family didn't love you guys?
No, they had us on the radio show
God.
for ratings, and then they actually, like the church is so weird when Focus, luckily they're done in that day of, but there was a day and age that we lived in not too long ago when people would actually call to have us speak, and then their elders would call Focus to see if Focus has the stamp of approval on this ministry.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, this happens? Like,
wow, it's like the mafia.
and I'm like, what? So one day I got canceled for a church in Indiana, and like I said, I don't like to lose. It wasn't even about the gig. I was like, why are we, what happened? Oh, we got a letter from Focus. I was like, can you send me that letter? I'd like to know what they're saying about us. So one time I was in Colorado Springs and I happened to go to Focus and I tried to find the person that wrote this letter, and they used the word constituencies. Like we have certain things that, you know, when people think of Focus, they don't think of Jesus Loves Porn Stars. So they basically wrote a letter saying, while we admire the work that they do, we can help you here at Focus. And I was like, you have no articles on porn. You've never talked about this. So I asked to meet the person that wrote this letter. It was funny because the lady at the front had just heard me speak at her church in Colorado. She's like, that's awesome. We're working with you guys now. I was like, oh, you're not.
Like, no, you're
and then
not.
like 5 minutes later, I was actually escorted out of the building.
No way.
And they were like, they called security, and I was like, I couldn't even go on the Focus tour. It was like, please leave. I was like, guys, I just want to know why you're writing letters about, like, I don't write letters about you, even though you ruined my 8th grade year when my dad played me James Dobson tapes on the way to school talking about sex. Like, I had to listen to that. I didn't write a letter to you about that. Like, that's what I had to go through, and now you're writing letters about, like, just stay in your lane. Like, and they just asked us to leave. And since then, I actually met with Jim Daly, like the new president, and we don't have a formal partnership, but I think I got
a chance to sit and talk with Jim one time. He seems like a cool guy.
Yeah, it was funny going back in his office. I'm like, I'm back in your office now. See, I'm not giving it, but we've had those run-ins. And I was telling you off camera about things where we've ruffled enough feathers, and part of it's just like, I don't care. You don't have to understand everything we do.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue, though, to go in these places where I know there's opportunity. So the guy that runs 4 of the most popular porn shows in the world used to do home and garden and events shows. Got into porn for money. I know his family. We've been Carl, who's on our team, has been to his kid's birthday parties. So we have real relationships with these people that they really like having us around. They see the need. So he has us sponsor the show. We sponsor all the Exotica shows. Now, people would say, why does XXX Church sponsor it? We get crap for that. Like, you sponsor a porn show. You give this guy more money. And our sponsorship looks a little different than, like, I don't need advertising on your website. I don't need your email list. The way we sponsor his porn show is his hotties room that's behind the scenes. At all his shows, he has a room that only the porn stars or the hired talent can go to get away from the stage where they're being touched or, asked for photos. It's a safe place. So we sponsor the show, which means we take care of the hotties room. So we have a team of women that are doing hair and makeup and food. Nobody sees it. But our sponsorship basically gives us in that room where he goes, I know you guys will take care of these girls. And it's not like talking them out of the industry or talking them out of their job. It's care and concern for them. And so when people go, why would you sponsor a show? Because we like we like him as a person. He gives us opportunities that you guys don't need to necessarily know about. And we like being here because he likes having us. When we're not, whether it's a church or a porn show, if somebody was like up against us, like, well, I'll let you guys in. Like, I wouldn't, like, man, I want to go where it's easy.
Yeah.
And that opportunity's there. Like, we're not best friends with everybody, but there's enough solid relationships in 17 years of track record that people respect us and they know that we're not just here for a story, but we're going to be coming back.
Well, you got further with them than you did with Focus on the Family.
Yeah. Those dang letters. I wish I ever got letters to XXX Church. Craig, what do you think about this? I wish I could write. Like, what do you think of Albert? All right. Well,
based off of XXX Church, we endorse Albert Tate.
Like, why this?
Oh my goodness,
but
dude, that's
it.
crazy.
Like,
that's crazy. What have you seen God do? Just a couple of testimonies, because the controversy, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, I'd imagine, Craig, God was up to something that day at PF Chang's, stirring in your heart as a youth pastor. What have you seen God do throughout the years of this kind of labor and investment in this ministry?
I think it's good. I mean, this is fresh because this is even a conversation last night with my wife, where we're trying to, like, she actually said to me, Craig, you're wasting your time. We're trying to solve this problem with marriages. You know, when porn comes into your marriage, and so we have this new product, and we've been testing it through this Facebook group, and I'm just frustrated. And she's like, you're wasting your time. Like, literally, like, this isn't going to work. It's so hard for people to hear. You know, it was just one, like, we've been up against, not only the controversy isn't what gets me, it's the challenges of, like, what we're trying to do is save marriages, and what we're up against. And I think, I would say for me personally, like, the humbling of, like, oh, cool, you can launch something and get, 100 million people on your website and, New York Times and all this great stuff. But at the end of the day, it's super humbling when, like, we're still 17 years into this going, that's not going to work. Or we're still after, like, this is so hard.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like, I'm 42. I was like, I want to work smarter, not harder. And I think the humbling idea of, like, gosh, yeah, you're the porn guy, but it's like, no, it's been so hard. And what we started this with so many years ago and where we're at today, 17 years later, yeah, we've learned a lot, but we're still focused on that same thing. It's like, how do we help people? And it keeps us up at night, you know? And I think for me to keep I think if I did something easier, if I did something that didn't have this kind of even shame attached to it, gosh, that could easily go to my head, or, oh, I'm this and that. But it's like that humbling of me, for me personally, to go, gosh, you got to continue to work and trust, and put your faith here to know that, man, you are making a dent. The fact that it took 5 years for us at a porn show to have one porn star leave the industry and give their life to the Lord. Like, I joke with people that have come and gone through our ministry over the years, like, you didn't stay long enough to see that. And so for me, man, I don't know, maybe it's 5 more years. Like, I've had enough things happen where God's shown himself faithful in 17 years to make up for the really hard struggle. But you see that.
For the woman that left, and then when she goes back, and the opportunity for her to be a witness and to minister to other women that are in it is just, like, who else can do that?
Yeah, it's, and even this, I mean, this one's harder. And, I've been friends with Ron Jeremy for years. I think, at the time, the biggest male porn star there is. And we've started debating around the country. And so we struck up this conversation, this great friendship. And, been on a 7-day tour with him, done a number of things with him. And I think he, when he had that point in his life where he almost died, had a 30% chance that he wouldn't live with this aortic aneurysm, and he called, asked him for prayer. And so we've gone through a lot together. And, I think God's, he's spoken at a number of churches with me in the debate. So it's been this interesting story. This year at the AVN, something that I never would have thought in a million years. Like, when I started this was when Ron was on Surreal Life with Vanilla Ice at the height of his. So here I am 17 years later at the Hard Rock Hotel in January, and I literally see Ron Jeremy's photo on the security guys at the Hard Rock Hotels, like, piece of paper. It was like, do not enter. And Ron is across the street at the Aria's Suites and Hotel, which is like a $39 crappy hotel. The porn show where this guy's given 40 years of his life to this industry. But because of this Me Too movement and different allegations in, Hollywood, there's been people that have come out against Ron and have said some things, which he's at a porn show and he might have taken some liberties here or there, but you're like, it's kind of weird because it's like there's people getting spanked and hit, and now Ron's signing somebody's breasts that they wanted signed. But in Hollywood, like, this is a different world, porn in Hollywood. And so I don't want to defend Ron, but I also go, so he wasn't allowed to be at the porn show this year, banned.
Wow.
But he was still in Vegas. And so my friend Brandon and Rachel, we all went over and brought him a sandwich and saw him at the hotel. And I said, man, I've seen Ron in dark, lowest moments, on his deathbed almost. But seeing him there, and like, here we have this opportunity, and this guy's across the street, and he can't come in. And I go, all of us just kind of left there going, man, it's sad, but it's also, I said, maybe this is what Ron needs in his life, to know the one thing you gave your life to for so many years, like, they don't want anything to do with you now. And that might be his wake-up call. Like, his heart stopping wasn't, but this idea of, like, they won't let me in this room. And like, those kind of things that, like, we wouldn't we haven't shared. And when you see God doing that, and like us walking away from the suites, with a pastor friend of mine from Pasadena and Rachel from CCV, being able to witness that, and you're like, man, that's why we're here. Like, I don't care what the haters say, like,
that's why
it's these relationships. And when you see the pain that people are carrying around, whether it's Ron Jeremy or some other porn star or a consumer, man, if we just wait for these people to show up on a Sunday at a church, we might be waiting too long. So the fact that we can be out there, you're grateful for those things. And then, I think those are the moments when I feel like I needed a few of those over the years to keep at it. Because otherwise you're like, it's just, people don't want help. People, when it comes to this stuff, there's a lot of people that just talk all day long, but they don't make any changes.
Wow.
And, that's what gets me down. But
there's a guy who's struggling with pornography right now, watching, listening to us. Top 3, 4 things he needs to do to get out. What advice do you give him?
And this guy married?
Yes.
Okay.
He says he's married, yeah.
So I think I mean, if we're going to talk about sex, porn, all these issues.
Yeah.
To me, it's more about communication and less about like, call it the medication. Because I think, porn is medicating some wound or some, it's masking something, whether it's trauma, whether it's pain, whether it's your marriage. Like there's something broken and this feels good, whether it's drugs or whether it's food or whether it's, alcohol or porn. I think sometimes we beat up on the issue of porn. And I go, let's back up. Like, so for that guy, I'm going to back up and go, gosh, I think the first thing you've got to do is ask yourself, why am I looking at porn? Is it because of, trauma? Is it because of pain? Is it because of, like, what's it fulfilling? And those are deeper questions of, like, so when I go to, like, ask yourself, when I go to porn, it's normally because I'm lonely or I'm depressed or I'm angry. And I think when you can start asking yourself those questions, you can get that idea of, like, gosh, I've got to fix this, not just, I think we sometimes, especially in the church, just, remove porn, take this out, block you, do this. Yeah. And it's like, well, if that never heals the heart. And so I think that self-discovery of why, asking yourself why. Second thing is like figuring out, the when and the where, So I reach out to this, at these moments, because then you can start to see, like, okay.
See the patterns and the rhythms,
Yeah, and then the hardest thing is then to decide, like, well, who can I actually talk to? I'm safe place in our website. People go to us all the time. But, like, without a relationship or a follow-up.
Yeah.
And so that's the barrier block. Like, that's where, when my wife and I were talking about this last night, why she said I was wasting my time with this product. We actually came up with this product that only is going to work if you tell your wife. And so we surveyed these guys that said, hey, how many of you are going through this journey with your wife? And like 60% said they are. But I was like, how come you didn't invite your wife into this Facebook group that we have for the women to help them? So you're really not. So I think if you can't talk to your wife or a friend, maybe a friend or a mentor or a pastor first, you've got to talk to somebody in real life. And I think that's where all the excuses, I'm a this, I'm a that, I can't do that. I don't care, you've got to.
Yeah.
And I think if you really want help, I mean, I was one watching Tiger, this past week going, I wonder if he's going to win. But in my gut, this guy's never going to win another tournament. I don't think because of his health problems. I think this guy, like, you connect the dots of, like, guy hasn't won a tournament since all this stuff, like, checked out of rehab real early. Like, he's still carrying around this stuff that's obviously not just affecting his golf game, but so much more. And I think these guys that won't make that next move to not come public, like, on a stage, but ask for help.
Accountability.
And then if you don't bring your wife in on this, I don't think your marriage is going to heal, because your wife's taking on so many different, emotional scars because of this. Well, I don't look like this. And it's not even about any of that. But then if you don't have hey, I'd like sex more with you. I would like, there's hurt and pain. And if the marriage isn't able to work through this, then okay, the guy's never going to fully, like, your wife doesn't want to be your mom or your helper in this, but I think
she's got to be a part of it.
She's got to be a part of it. And I think you've got to help her understand that this doesn't have anything to do with her.
But how to do that, though? Because that's the biggest disconnect. Having the wife or the woman understand that it's not about this other woman and her breast, in her body, her hair. So she's thinking, so you want a blonde with, you know what I mean, with size triple Z's. Is that what you want me to do? You know what I mean? It's like, no, that could have been a pole that smiled at me at that moment. Yeah. It's just, it has everything to do with my depravity, not necessarily your physique or how you're shaped. How do you get that disconnect? Because we're so hardwired differently.
We are, but like when you look at, and not just talk about celebrities, but like TMZ, like these are all stories we know. And this is what hits my inbox. When Kirk Franklin went on Oprah years ago, and they're like, he's talking about throwing away porn in the trash. And then you're like, his wife's beautiful. Has nothing to do with how beautiful. Yeah. When you look at the prostitutes Tiger was with compared to his wife, like what? When you look at like Kevin Hart getting caught with a stripper versus his wife, you're like, it doesn't make sense. Because so I think for women to first see that it's not he did that because they look better. Half the time they look worse.
They usually look worse.
And you're with a prostitute where you're like, no, this is because you're chasing something that's easier, and it's porn is in your pocket. It's 24/7, or I can go do this. And there's not a deeper connection. I think what most men want is that deeper connection, what happens is you bring porn in the window, the walls go up with the wife, she gets angry, she doesn't, and so oftentimes they're now, I mean, the Bible is clear. It's like Satan sneaks in your relationship when you're not having sex.
Yeah.
And I think those
Wait
walls
a minute,
go
what
up.
verse is that? The Bible says Satan sneaks in your relationship when you're not having sex?
When it says that the only time that you shouldn't be having sex in 1 Corinthians 7, where it talks about there's a season of fast, for a season of fasting.
Yes,
but
yes.
when it says that, for, I permit this, but the devil has a way of getting into, like when you're not having sex, it says the devil has a way of getting in between you. And I think that's
interesting.
where,
I got to use that verse.
it's out of the Message translation of like, I got to find it.
Oh, yes.
Of like,
praise Jesus.
when you're not having sex. So it's like, what I've seen is that's where a lot of this stuff, kind of the fallout. So
let's talk about that, because some of the other projects that you and your wife are working on are starting to minister now to couples. And what is it? How to have the best sex now?
yeah, best sex life now.
Best sex life now.
Yeah, I stole that from Joel Osteen, by the way.
Like
I didn't put my face on it, but I was like, Joel Osteen is so friendly and so nice, and it's the best, whatever, he's got that one. I was like, best sex life now. Like, who doesn't want that?
Dude,
like,
you're in the titles, bro. You're good. You should totally put your face on the book, though.
Yeah, I was like, but even
best
that.
sex, yeah. So,
but it's hard.
And then, because how do you then not have the wife feeling like I am, since you can't have, if we're not making love, then you go look at porn, and how does that not diminish her view of what lovemaking is, in the sense to say, you're just using me to deal with your horniness? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's this shallow understanding of sex, and when it's reduced down just a physical transaction, how does she not feel like a cash register where I'm just fulfilling a transaction here for you?
Yeah, no, and that's where, I mean, if we back up and you say, okay, so how does a husband engage with the wife on this? What guys don't understand is and what we tell women, like they're not emotionally connected with the prostitute, with the massage parlor, with the stripper, with the porn. It's just fulfilling. It's that transaction kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they're doing that because it's easy. It's like fast food. Like I'm not expecting a steak from McDonald's. You're expecting a crappy burger.
Yeah.
Like that's what this is. It's just a cheap substitute, because the real thing over here.
No offense to all of our McDonald's sponsors.
Yes, sorry.
Just-
But so for women though, women see where their mind goes is like, I don't compare. So that's where the disconnect. Guys are pursuing porn for this reason. And then women, when guys see porn, it's like, oh, he cheated on me. He did this. He loves this person, this. So their minds start going like, what's wrong with me? And they internalize it, where a guy's like, hey, I still love you. I'm pursuing this. So I think part of the disconnect is for men to see and women to see how this view of what you're doing is actually like, is being perceived by two different people, two different ways.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. So I've literally, I had a woman that's like, I showed him, I gained 130 pounds. And it was like, she's so mad that it's like, I don't even want you to touch me. I'm going to even, gain so much weight. It's like, well, one, you did not proving anything to him, and you're hurting yourself. And it's like these walls go up of hurt and pain. And so I think it's way easier to have any of these conversations with people prior to getting like the porn in, because if I had newlyweds sitting right here, and we could say, hey guys, what's one thing of advice that you guys could do, before you start chasing? And I would almost say this is like insurance. It's not like you can't ever 100%, fair-proof your marriage.
Yeah.
Like stuff's going to happen. But I think if we could get better at our communication about sex, about our desire for it, about our need for it, about our wants for it, about what we like about it, and we could talk as couples before tragedy strikes and go, like even getting on the same page. Like I spoke at this marriage conference with my wife, and we said, my wife's like, I was like, get out a pen and paper. I want you guys to write down a number. Guys, write down how many often you want to have sex each week. Women, how many times you want to have sex each week. This conversation isn't that hard. And then my wife's like, we can't have them flip it over. And I was like, yes, like please, let's do it. She's like, no. Because like, that would be people too. I was like, awkward, who cares? So anyways, we said tonight, here's your homework. Go back to your room, and all you have to do is flip over your card. So if my wife says 7 and I say 1, I'm like, I don't know, get out the calculator, 3.5.
Yeah.
Just meet in the middle.
Yeah.
So because I think that's the thing. Oftentimes in marriage, you're like, well, I thought we were having sex enough. It's like 5 times a week isn't enough. Well, if somebody's wanting 10 times a week and you're doing 5 times a week or 5 times a month, where's the disconnect? So that idea of like, and it's as simple as like, this isn't about sex at all, but my kids go to school now 20 minutes away in Burbank. My wife and I were like, let's just make a deal. Twice a week, Craig, you take them. 3 times a week, I do. So there's just clear expectations that if I'm gone or whatever, it's fine. But it's just like, hey, if we're here on a normal week, this is what, like there's some flexibility, but we're not missing each other on like, oh, I wish Craig would do this. And on sex, that number one thing, if you could just go, and I think couples are going, some women are going once a month, I thought that's it. And he's going, man, I'd like once a week. The average couples are having sex less than, I think, especially in the church, I think when I talk about best sex life now, people are not having the best sex life now. We couldn't do this for so long. It's so bad. It's so wrong. It's this. And then we get in marriage and we're having sex less than anybody else. And, I think I can't tell you how often you should be having sex. Your partner can. And if you could enable that conversation, I think it would solve a lot of your problems.
So what's normal? Most Christian couples are having sex how often?
Less than once a week.
Less than once a week?
Yeah.
And what's the ideal, statistically, what's normal?
Well, that's the thing. When I talk about why are like people outside the church, why are my single friends having better sex than married sex? That's where I go, okay, why are we having sex once a week or once a month or treating it like it's literally friends of mine, because I've seen this, and I'm not going to say you don't have sex, you're going to go to porn, but like I've had friends where it's like, dude, you're in a sexless marriage, you have a roommate. Well, you're going to be susceptible to so much more stuff.
Well, because the enemy is going to come in.
That's where I go back to the passage. We're going, hey, they're going to come after you. So I think what's normal is like whatever that middle ground is, like, that take off your honeymoon, where you're like, okay, I have this expectation there. But hey, for us, my wife and I, we say, hey, let's try and have sex every other day. Is it on the iCal and does an alarm go off? No, but it's one of those like, does it mean I can't have sex twice in back-to-back days? No.
And
but
how long have you guys been married?
19 years.
And you have kids?
Yeah.
Obviously?
Yeah. And now they don't go to bed at 7 like they used to. But for a while I was like, why do we have to go to bed so early? Well, mom goes to sleep. But
and then if I had the Pinners here, do you know the Pinners? Joyce Pinner, the sex therapist? Yeah. They live out in Pasadena.
Okay.
So if I had them here, they probably say they're degrees of sex, like
yes.
right? Like y'all aren't like chandelier swinging sex every other day, but they're probably. But I don't know. You look pretty happy. I don't.
It's funny though, when you do a course with your wife that's called Best Sex Life Now, she would be embarrassed if I say that. Sometimes afterwards we're like, that wasn't the best, that was just tired sex. That wasn't the best sex life now. You're like, but because the book, the video series is less about like the actual act, it's more about, I think for us, whether you're in a fight, whether you're not connecting. There's days that with our kids and your kids and life and busy where if you're just constantly missing each other. And you don't even,
well, there are times when I walk in my house, I can see I was like, yeah, I'm not having sex for 3 days. I can see it on her face right now. She's so consumed. Yeah. I'm not even going to try. We're good. You know what I mean? It's like you see it's not there. You know what I mean? It's the stress of life, anxiety, or whatever. Yeah. And then there's sometimes walk in the house and say, kids, go to bed right now. I can see it in mom's eye. It's about to be on. You know what I mean? It's about to.
But if you could take, and we've told a couple, I heard this from John and Jenny Kitna, guy played in the NFL for years. They were at this marriage conference years ago, and I stole this one, but I think it's some of the best advice I ever, because I did these games. You probably did these games too. You get married, especially early in marriage, and you're as a dude, you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna be here, see if she wants this.
Yeah.
And then you're like, then it's a game. Like I'm gonna go to bed and see if she pursues me.
The initiation. That's kind of you sit there waiting.
Yeah, and you're like, wait, and then you start getting mad. Like, why is she not asking? Like, why she doesn't want to have sex? Like, last I heard, this was good for her. And then you play those games. Yeah. So then I heard them at this marriage conference, and John's just like, you know what, guys? Like, take that initiation off the table, and guys, you lead on this. And I know that's not 2018 correct, whatever. Right. But in a way of just going, hey guys, don't wait for that, and just part of that initiation, or even having those expectations clear. Like for me and Jeanette, it's not like, well, we said every other day. Well, dude, you were out of town for 2 days. Yeah. We're not gonna fight over it, but it's like when you put that expectations, Just like when you have a budget and then you go over budget, you're like, okay, well, we had a budget. If you don't have a budget, you don't know if you're over budget.
Yeah.
You don't know if you're hitting and missing.
Yeah.
And so for us to be able to go communicate about what we both want and what is obtainable in our life right now, and then if we find ourselves going a week without sex, we know something's off there. Because, hey, we've committed to this. But, man, those games early on, forget playing that. It's like, hey, let's figure out what we're trying to do. And, yeah, some nights, I mean, my wife doesn't stay up late like I do, so she'll tell me clearly, Craig, if we wait this long, it's just tired sex, or it's just this. It's just, it's still sex, but you're like,
I'll take it.
Yeah, but, hey, I'll come home at 1 today. Like, right. But, you know, schedules and busyness, and I just find that a lot of people, and then porn enters the scene, or an affair, or problems, or health, a number of things in marriage, especially over 19 years. I mean, I dealt with a number of things from work to, and what do? You're just like, it takes you out of the game, so to speak. And then what you find, though, is your relationship, if you just get in that kind of roommate, if sex it's not just physical, it brings you together like nothing else you can do. So if you're not having
most intimate connection,
like you're missing out. And then if you're not even, like when we were talking about it, I sat with a buddy, and I just asked him, because I'm just curious, not like, this isn't locker room talk, but he'd been married 20 years, you know, Christian conservative. I said, what's your wife's favorite sex position? And he's like, I don't know. So Jenna and I have talked about this a lot. And then I've actually started asking more people about it. Not because, like, once again, it could, Craig asked me what you like. No, do you even know? And the fact that you don't, like, if you've been doing something, I don't know, like I've been going to the gym now for a year. I know what speed I go on the treadmill. Not very fast still, like I'm a power walker. But I know what weights I can lift and not, because like before I didn't know. If I've been having sex for 20 years with one person.
And you don't know the favorite position.
Yeah, it's like Jeanette knows what I like. I like, you know, cupcakes rather than ice cream. Like she knows what I like to eat. So that same idea of like, you don't know your wife and you've never pursued your wife enough to know what she likes, what she doesn't like. Why are couples, you know, we were talking about, I saw you printed out some of the 50 Shades of Grey stuff. And, you know, when we watched that, I sat in that movie theater and I watched these 50-year-old women from La Cañada. We went to the movie theater there, and it was like, they're all drinking their wine and they're all 50. They were all in the third row, and it's me and my wife. And I was like watching them, and I was just like, what? I wanted to interview them. But my wife's already embarrassed because I have a notepad at 50 Shades of Grey. And, but I'm intrigued, like, what do you see here that you desire? And it was just that idea of like, yeah, I don't think Christian Grey is obviously the man that everyone desires, but there's something about obviously the power, the success, but all that. But what I think, when we don't know, you know, when your wife doesn't know you, when you don't know your husband, when sex is about what I want versus what she wants. And if you haven't taken that time, and I think a lot of Christians like me that grew up, you're like, well, is that dirty to say like, hey, I like it like this, or no, like. And it's funny because Ron Jeremy, this porn star, that we always joke, and he sat with me and my wife one time, and he's like, hey guys, and granted, like I have access to different people, and I don't have much of a filter. So I was like, Ron, what's your favorite position? Like you're a porn star, you've had sex with 5,000 women on thousands of films. Like what am I missing out on? Like, because he's like trying to ask us, have you ever brought in somebody else into your relationship? No, Ron. Could you watch like this film? No, Ron. Like you tell me, what's the best? And Ron's literally like joking, he jokes, but he was serious. He goes, my favorite position? And this is from a porn star. He says, well, missionary position. That's the only way you guys can have sex, right? And he throws that joke. I'm like, yeah, Ron, because we're Christians. We can only do like, yes, this way. But it was funny to hear from him because I could see a girl and make that connection in her eyes.
And he says that.
And he says it, where I'm like, you know, Ron, like all this gross stuff, obviously, that porn puts out, like, you need to do this. So like, what am I missing out on that you've done? Because I've had sex with one woman. You've had sex, and for him to go, you know, make that joke of like, well, it's how you have sex. And I think a lot of Christians think, well, yeah, we can only do this. And then it gets so boring or so routine. But when Ron's saying, look, hey, at the end of the day, it's about that connection with somebody. And that's where we have that opportunity in marriage that Ron's never experienced being, you know, single, that we have that opportunity to connect. So to me, it doesn't even matter how crazy it goes or this and that. If you have that connection, but if you can communicate, and I think that's where a lot of Christian couples break down of like, I can't tell him what I like. I can't tell her. I can't make any sounds. I can't do that. I can't go. And I think, man, this is a good thing like, why are we so close? Like,
well, God created it. It's kind of like redeeming God's vision for sex and the purity and the beauty, but it has to be dealt with in the context of honesty, communication, relationship, trust. Like the best position of sex, the best position with sex is for it to be positioned in a loving, trusting, holy relationship. Like that's the best position for sex.
Yeah.
You should put that in your book.
I bought that .com already, Redeeming Sex. Because somebody said that, and I was like, that's the whole idea.
Redeeming sex. So you own that?
Yeah, because I was like,
great.
I was like, that's a book. Like I gotta, like that's better than best. Joel Osteen's best.
Best
because
sex life now.
That's what we're trying to do. It's like redeem this conversation. We gotta like this is good.
Yeah.
And I mean the close. I think like I said, this doesn't fireproof your marriage from a sense of like. Porn. There's all this other stuff, noise that's going to brought in. But if you can be there where you're free, and all this started for me and my wife. We've done XXX Church. I've done that primarily by myself with our team. My wife's helped in the background. But we're sitting at a marriage conference, and it's a weekend to remember.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, weekend to remember. And we went because we hit a time in our marriage at 13 years. My dad had died, Jeanette got sick. It was just a hell of a year. And so what does my wife do? We need to go to a conference. What does any husband in the world go? That screams out we're in trouble. So at least it was Vegas. I was like, all right, like good food. And it was so funny and so awkward. They're like, be careful when you walk through the casino. We're like, that's why I came. But, it was one of those like so conservative. And there were some good things in there. But the couple that taught through a workshop, and it was just like recited stuff that somebody else, they brushed over sex. And they were like, I thought my wife would shave her legs every night when we got married. Expectations. And then no porn talk, no sex talk. So my wife and I were back in the hotel room that night. And our stuff wasn't about sex. It was just like, man, this is a hard year. Yeah. So we're sitting there, and my mind kind of goes this way, where I was like, okay, we're going to get through this. But Jeanette, what was wrong with this conference today? And we're like, I think sex is probably one of the biggest, sex and money, these are big issues. Yeah. So I was like, what about if and my wife's never been on camera, never been on a stage, always behind the scene. She has a whole different experience with sex than I do. Didn't grow up in the church, and so we worked through a lot of that. And I just said, Jeanette, there's one thing that I can never do by myself. Like I can't start talking about sex by myself. That'd be masturbation. That'd be like,
which then leads to the XXX Church.
I was like, if I do this thing, I think we have an opportunity to be more honest, more real. And what I'm seeing is our audience to XXX Church is growing up. They're getting married. They're having kids. And now this stuff is become a problem in their relationship. Why don't we start having it? So I was like, what about if we did this video series? And that's where she's like, I'll do the video series as long as I never see a comment. I never want to hear from anybody because there's haters. She doesn't like the critique and criticism. And then nobody is in the room when we film it. So the guy came to film it, and she's like, well, he can't be here. I was like, well, he's just shooting it. And then I surprised her by saying, well, we got asked to speak at a conference. And it was in Hawaii, but she still didn't care. It ruined 4 months of our lives. She's just scared to death. And she's like, I don't need to put stuff out there like this.
Yeah.
But I think she's been willing to do it slowly because she sees so many people that are in pain over this. And I'm like, look, we don't have the answers. We're not like the sexperts, but it's less about all the stuff and more about communication. And if people could just not be so weird over I'm so shy to ask, like my friend that was in sex therapy forever, it's like, what do you guys talk about if you don't talk about, well, what do you like? What do you don't like? What does he need to do? What do you need to do? What are
y'all talking about? Yeah,
and then, we joke even too about just ways to break some of that mundane. My wife said it, and I didn't come up with it, but, she said at this conference, hotel sex is the best. I'm like, all right, but just that idea, getting out of the house and...
But it is, what I'm learning is it's like that because the hotel room is clean. So the room is clean, everything is done, you don't have to worry about anything. So I was like, every other week I'm trying to go to a hotel.
Yeah.
It was
we did experiences for Christmas where I, instead of gifts, so I took her to Waco to go to, because everyone wants to go to Waco. No, for the Joanna Gaines house flipper thing, the Silos.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we'll go to Waco. But she's like, all she literally got me, she's like, "Oh, we'll go stay at a nice hotel in LA." He was like, "I don't care. It can be Ontario. Like, it's just the Aloft in Ontario is fine. This is 3,000 points. Like, that's better." But it's just like sex weekend. I don't need to get on a plane.
Right,
it was just this
We'll just go
idea
up
of
the
like, and I think if you could just get there and be that free and have those
Yeah.
conversations, that's where it's just. But if you don't and you have those things, and I think ultimately, for men, if women knew that men like ultimately do desire you, this other stuff is in our face and it's over the top, and they'll click on it, but it's like they want you, and it's like they're not comparing. We're not comparing you with this, but we're bombarded with all these things, and I know too. It's like we live in that world where it's like, oh well, you can't even, when you have this separation of men and women, it's like, oh well, no, I'm not talking about equal pay, and I'm not talking about these things that. But men's brains are wired differently than women.
Yeah.
I mean, you walk out of the shower, do a dance by, and see if your wife even looks up from like the House Flipper show that she's watching.
Right.
And you're like, your wife walks out of the shower, I don't care if you're in the middle of like a conference call, it's on mute, and you're like,
hello.
And it's like, sometimes it's just that, even that one difference of like men being so visually.
Stimulated.
Like it took me 5 years in my marriage to finally say, like obviously Jeanette and I are way more comfortable now, 5 years into, hey Jeanette, why don't we have sex with the lights on? Like that'd be way more fun. Well, why is that hard for a woman? Because obviously there's a lot there. But guys, I'm like, gosh, I don't need sleep in the dark. Like I don't need all the windows open, but it'd be sure nice to like have some lights on here. This is, and so I remember writing that in a book with Chauncey Feldhahn, and I remember the editor was like, you can't say that to women. Like that's gonna bring up all these emotions. What, that your husband wants to see you naked?
Yeah.
Like these are good things, but it brings out some hard things for people.
Wow.
But if you can get through that stuff, talk, communicate, this stuff's not rocket science.
Yeah, communication is a big deal. That's the big piece. We have something that we do at our church called Question of the Day, where we ask our congregation a question, they turn around and they answer the question. I want to close every episode with the question of the day, but I got a whole list of them. So this is rapid fire.
Got it.
Just hit me back with your
Will you do
first
any
thought.
of these at church on a Sunday?
Would I do any of these? Yes. I
Okay,
think we've
great.
done them all. There's one that we won't do on Sunday
This
morning.
is better than the meet
good.
and greet, the fake shake hands stuff.
Yeah, we go deeper than the
that's
fake
good.
shake hands. We give them about 5 minutes. If you could join any musical ensemble in history, which would it be?
Bon Iver.
Nice. What is something that everyone else loves that you think is overrated?
I was just going to say This Is Us.
No, that's a good one.
Any sitcom. I've never watched any sitcoms.
Yeah. This Is Us. That's a good one because everyone loves it. What other profession did you consider pursuing?
Selling baseball cards. Then Pogs came out.
What is something you're bummed that you're still bad at?
That I'm bummed that I'm still bad at?
Yeah. Like, man, it sucks that I'm still bad at this. I'm not good at this.
I'd say balance. Still shutting off. Being able to not stop.
It's good. What is something you used to say that you don't say anymore?
Bounce your eyes?
Bounce your eyes? You don't say that anymore?
No.
Why not?
I mean, I think it's.
Tell people what bounce your eyes is.
Well, I think like the Everyman's Battle original book that came out, and everyone's, I gotta bounce my eyes. But it's just like then we're walking like, the more I've read and studied about the brain, it's just like, no, there's a reason why. And I'm not saying to stand and gawk, but I think that idea is like, that's not. It's like giving me a prescription, but not telling me what's wrong with me. And I think, just saying that, it's like, I'm trying to bounce my eyes, bounce my eyes. And then it's like, gosh, like you get nothing else done today. You just be constantly bouncing
Well,
your
because it
eyes.
all depends on where you are.
Yeah.
If you bouncing, everywhere you bounce, there's something else there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think saying that as a way of like, that could actually help you, where I'd rather say, well, what asking a little deeper question.
That's really good. That's really good. What is something you pray about a lot that you don't talk about often?
Gosh, that's just,
You have the face that you look like you know what it is.
I know what it is. Yeah, if I even say it. Yeah, no, I think because it's wow. I think you and I have this position where we get asked a lot of questions out of our lane because it's like I remember back in the day when Larry King would have a pastor, Rick Warren or Joel Osteen, and then you throw all this stuff at them because it's like, they speak on all our behalfs, and I think we're in this day and age now where it's like, man, I've been able to talk about marriage and I've been able to talk about porn, and I don't talk about a lot about theology, these other things. So I think a lot of things I wrestle with internally. One is like that lately has been like the presence of the Lord's voice, like the things that I'm hearing. And then my struggle is like, what is a career suicide versus what is stuff for me and what is stuff for others. And I think for us, like even recently I shared something and it was just like my wife's, why do you think you're supposed to share these things? And I go, well, I mean, you speak on a stage every Sunday, whether you're reading my books, writing our blogs, our video series, everything I share is out of my experience. So I wrestle with, it's always come through that. And then sometimes it's like, no, you need to sit on this one a while. And then, what's the Lord doing and what's next? And so I think those
things that you pray about, but you don't talk about.
Yeah, where I initially go to, is that a book? Is that this? Or do I? And then my wife's like, dude, we just started that with our family. Like, don't tell anyone. Like, we didn't even know that sucks. Like, you're so quick to like think you have to share that. So lately I've been sitting on a lot of things, writing more than I've probably ever written in my life, more different notepads of random thoughts. And I've even started voice recording myself talking and saving those notes and like on this day, this is what I'm thinking. And so somehow, eventually if that stuff plays out, but right now it's like, I feel like there's more coming, more that I'm wrestling with that I don't have a place for. But then, because then you go, man, no, I'm supposed to just be here right now. And, if I got to speak on, well, I wouldn't want to, like I don't have 52 talks, but if I had that opportunity every week and I had to come up with content all the time, like on different topics, but right now I don't have that place that I'm like, this is just for me. And maybe it stays for me. Maybe eventually it's for somebody else. So
interesting. Very interesting. When was the last time you had to say I'm sorry?
On the way here. On the way here to my wife. Like my wife's worked for us for so many years, and I work with a number of people and staff and different things. And, when your wife's staff, but like she's still your wife, but it's like, okay, who's right here? Like you did something wrong, but like you're my wife. But it's like, then it's just like, why is it a big deal? Well, because it's like this job, like, so just owning it. Like I think every day, like trying to be better at owning. Yeah, it's like how you communicate, how you suck it up when you're wrong. But all the time.
That's good. What is something that is often misunderstood about you?
Shock value. Like, I think early on, I told you, we could talk, you can read and Google crazy things I've done. And to me, I'm more calculated and think through stuff, especially at 42 than obviously at 26, but like, I'm not going to roll something out that's going to ruin our ministry, but I think people just think like, and I think I don't have much of a filter. And part of doing XXX Church is like, gosh, if we can't say this, who can? So when I hear that, you just do that for shock value. It's like, no, there's a point. Like us doing this stunt at a youth pastor convention, it's shocking and got your attention, but there's a specific point that we want to talk about these things.
And it's a serious point.
And when you talk about sex and you talk about porn, like it's just naturally in your face. So, it's not, I think people think that, like, that's just for the tabloids or this or a headline. And there's some things that, but even that, it's like there's a reason, because if we can get in and get our message out, like you got to figure out those areas that you can
where you can come
navigate.
in and make an impact.
But
no, that's good. What's a area in your leadership where you're still growing as a leader?
Letting go of, I wouldn't say perfectionist, but like I've led the charge. I've got a way of doing things, and as you involve more staff and more people, and if I hold that too tight, like, you know, and don't let them fail. So lately, I just on a conference call yesterday, our team, Michelle, who's worked for me for 13 years, now they're making fun of me because they're like, my classic response lately has been, your call, Carl. So Michelle repeated, your call, Carl. And I was like, guys, that's way better than like 4 years ago of me like, oh no, it's my way.
Yeah.
And now it's almost like they've expected that for so long, and it's just like, wait, I got to figure this out? Yeah, like, you take that. And I think me constantly going, man, I want you guys to be in this just as much as me. And yeah, I don't want to be the one like making all the decisions, saying it's got to be my way. Like, no one wants to be on that team either.
That's
so
good.
I think that's been hard. I mean,
good.
obviously, you know, to involve a team in your decisions versus like, because I got strong opinions and, you know, but yeah.
That's good. Last one. What's your favorite cuss word?
Favorite cuss word? Oh gosh. So there's a bunch. So my wife said, hey, can we not cuss? She doesn't cuss. She's like, can we not? I think it's just like trashy. Can you not like cuss? And my son's at the point where he listens to a lot of music, and I don't care that much about language. But we're having this debate in the house because it's like, Craig, I think it's just like, it's just classless and whatever. But there's certain words. I would say that it's not even a cuss word, but I do, and it's like, as guys, like, especially some of my friends that are athletes, calling each other bags. For some reason, I wouldn't even say that's a cuss word, but that's like, or that's like, for some reason, I think that, so my wife doesn't like that one. But I would never say that to her, but some of these guys.
Some of these other guys.
It's just funny, but that's been a favorite. But, yes.
Craig Gross.
That's a good one.
Dude, thanks, bro.